Everyone in the garage laughed when 16-year-old Haley walked in, wearing worn boots and holding a rusty wrench. The owner, Frank Dalton, dared her to fix an engine his top mechanics had declared hopeless. Cameras rolled, expecting a disaster. But what Haley did next turned the room silent, and what she revealed about who trained her left grown men speechless. No one saw it coming. What was hidden behind her calm eyes would change everything. And it all started here. Before we start, like this video and comment where you're watching from. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories. Now, let's begin. Haley stepped into Dalton's auto repair. Just before noon, her boots coated in dust from the long walk down the highway. She was only 16, but there was something unshakable about the way she moved, as if the grease on her hands carried more knowledge than half the crew combined. The garage buzzed with activity until one by one heads turned. A few mechanics chuckled. One whispered, "Whose kid is that?" Another said, "Wrong place, sweetheart." Frank Dalton, the garage owner, emerged from his office holding a clipboard. He was a broad-shouldered man in his late 40s, with oil-stained jeans and a firm voice that carried weight. He raised an eyebrow at the sight of the girl. "Can I help you?" he asked with a smirk, expecting her to ask for directions or sell something. "I heard you had an engine no one could fix," Haley replied calmly. Her voice was clear, strong, and unwavering. That stopped Frank. He glanced at his head mechanic Carlos, who rolled his eyes and leaned against the hood of a rusted-out pickup truck. "Kid, this is not a toy store," Carlos said. "This engine is toast. CU is fried. Timing is off. Compression is dead. Even NASA could not restart this thing." Haley stepped closer. "Let me take a look." Frank crossed his arms, intrigued by the boldness. "You know what? Fine. Let us have some fun. You fix this engine and I will pay you $500. You mess it up, you clean the base for a week. Deal." Every mechanic in the garage turned to watch. Phones came out. Started recording. Haley nodded once. "Deal." She dropped her backpack, pulled her long hair into a tight ponytail, and climbed into the engine bay without hesitation. The room went quiet except for the clicking of sockets in the hum of Haley's focus. She worked with precision, not wasting a single motion. Within minutes, she bypassed a faulty sensor, realigned the crankshaft manually, and rewired a section of corroded harness using nothing but a multi-tool and a soldering pen from her bag. Frank watched, his amusement slowly fading into disbelief. Carlos leaned in closer, blinking in confusion. "How did she know to reset the fuel map?" "Manually," he whispered. Haley kept going, never looking up. Every move was confident, every decision sharp. 30 minutes later, she stepped back, wiped her hands on a rag, and said, "Try it. Now." Frank turned the key. The engine coughed, then roared. Silence followed. Absolute stunned silence. Carlos mouthed, "What just happened?" Haley turned to Frank, meeting his stunned eyes. "You asked who taught me. It was my father. He rebuilt engines before I could walk." Frank opened his mouth, but said nothing. A single thought echoed through the room. Who was this girl, really? What none of them knew was that Haley's past held a secret far more powerful than the engine she just revived. And in the next few minutes, the truth would flip everything they thought they knew upside down. Frank stood frozen beside the rumbling engine, his hand still resting on the ignition. Around him, silence settled over the garage like a heavy fog. Every mechanic who had laughed at Haley just minutes earlier now stared in disbelief, their jaws slack, their pride deflating. With every smooth purr of the engine, the impossible had just become reality. And a teenager had done it in under 30 minutes. Carlos scratched his head, eyes darting between Haley and the engine, like he had just seen a ghost. "Who is your father?" he finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Haley glanced at the floor for a moment, then straightened her shoulders. "My dad was Mason Whitmore," she said quietly. The name dropped like a hammer in the room. A stunned hush followed. Carlos stepped back slowly. Frank's eyes widened. "Mason Whitmore," he repeated like he could not believe it. Haley nodded once. "He taught me everything before he passed away." Frank leaned against the workbench, his mind reeling. Mason Whitmore was not just a mechanic. He was a legend, known across the state for building custom engines that outran Ferraris and outlasted military tanks. He had worked on engines for NASCAR teams, high-end restorations, and even military contracts. His skills had become myth after he suddenly disappeared from the scene years ago. No one had heard much since, and now his daughter had just walked into Frank's garage and resurrected a junkyard relic, like it was second nature. "Why did you not tell me who you were?" Frank asked, still processing the moment. "'Cause I wanted to see how people treated someone with no name," Haley replied, her voice firm but not bitter. "I wanted to earn it." That line cut through the room like a blade. Some of the younger mechanics shifted uncomfortably. A few lowered their phones. No one was laughing anymore. Haley picked up her backpack, but before she could leave, Frank stopped her. "Wait," he said. "I owe you $500. He pulled a wad of cash from his back pocket and counted it out, slowly, as if paying her made everything more real. Haley took it politely, but her expression did not change. "I am not here for money," she said. "I came because this garage used to mean something. My dad worked here before he opened his own shop. He told me stories about how this place used to be about passion, not pride." Frank's face darkened. "That was a long time ago." Haley stared at him, her eyes sharp. "Then maybe it is time to bring that back." Those words hit deeper than anyone expected. Carlos folded his arms, glancing at the younger crew. They looked shaken, some even embarrassed. The mood in the room had shifted entirely, like someone had pulled the curtain back and revealed something raw underneath. Before Haley could step out the door, a loud voice interrupted. "Wait, before you go, can you help me?" Was Logan, one of the youngest apprentices, barely 18, wide-eyed and clearly inspired. Haley turned. "With what?" "My Civic," he said nervously. "It has been misfiring for weeks. No one can figure it out." Frank opened his mouth to say something, but stopped himself. Haley walked back in without a word, heading toward the corner of the garage where the Civic sat. This time, no one laughed. Something had begun, and none of them knew just how deep Haley's connection to the past and the truth About her father would go. The Civic sat quietly under the flickering garage. Lights, its hood already opened like it, was waiting for someone to finally understand it. Logan stood beside it, nervous, wiping his hands on his jeans. As Haley approached, everyone else stayed back, watching silently, not wanting to interrupt what felt like something sacred. Even Frank, who had run this shop for over 20 years, did not dare speak. Haley did not hesitate. Reached into her backpack and pulled out a small leather pouch, old, worn, and clearly valuable. She unzipped it carefully to reveal a collection of vintage precision tools, some engraved with the initials M.W. Each one had the shine of decades of care, but more importantly, they held stories. Stories of late nights in oil-stained overalls, engines roaring back to life under the hands of a legend. Logan leaned closer. Are those your dad's? Haley nodded. He gave them to me the day I rebuilt my first transmission. I was 12. The group stirred. Even Carlos raised his eyebrows. She ran her fingers along the edge of the engine like she was reading. Then she closed her eyes for a second, listening not just to the metal, but to the echoes of lessons, the sound of her father's voice in her memory. Start it up, she said. Logan climbed into the driver's seat and turned the engine sputtered, hesitated, then stumbled into a rough idle, shaking, like it had no rhythm left in it. Haley listened closely. Then she motioned for him to cut it. Misfire is not just mechanical, she said, stepping in. It is emotional. Engines speak if you listen. Frank scoffed slightly, but the others leaned in closer. Haley checked the plugs, tightened the coils, then reached behind the intake manifold. Her hand found a broken vacuum hose. She did not celebrate. She just nodded to herself, replaced it with a spare from her pouch, and adjusted the throttle body. Try it again, she said. Logan did. The Civic roared to life. Smooth, clean, almost too perfect. The look on Logan's face was one of pure awe. How did you know? Haley looked at him seriously. Because that sound, that specific uneven rumble, followed by a dip. It is what my dad called the heartbeat misfire. He said, you feel it in your bones before you even see it. The garage fell into silence again, but this time it was filled with respect. Carlos stepped forward, scratching his head. That was unbelievable. Frank, still near the back, seemed torn like something inside him, wanted to admit what he had just witnessed was beyond him. But pride was not an easy thing to let go of. Haley packed her tools quietly, but her eyes scanned the room. This place is filled with good people, she said. But your pride is getting in your way. You are afraid of being wrong. That hit hard. Carlos nodded slowly. Logan stepped forward again. Can you teach us? The words hung in the air like a spark, waiting to ignite. Haley did not smile, but something in her eyes softened. Can share what I know, but it is not just about fixing things, she said. Is about listening, respecting the machine, respecting each other. That is what my dad believed. A long silence followed. Then, to everyone's surprise, Frank finally spoke. You said your dad used to work here, he said, voice low. He was a good man. Taught me everything I knew. Then he left, opened his shop, never looked back. Haley turned to him. He left because he wanted more. He believed this place could be great, but he felt ignored. He was tired of being talked over. Frank stared at the floor. The others looked at him, unsure what he would say next. Then he said something no one expected. Maybe it is time we start listening again. In that moment, the garage shifted, not just in atmosphere, but in purpose. The next morning, the garage looked different. Not physically, but in energy. Something had changed overnight. The mechanics arrived earlier than usual. Even Carlos, who always dragged his feet in late with a breakfast burrito and excuses, walked in with gloves already on. The old Civic stood at the center like a monument. Not just a car, but a symbol of something they had nearly lost. Pride in their craft. Haley was already there, wearing the same hoodie and jeans, her hair tied back tightly. She was wiping down a set of wrenches, laying them out with precision that made even the veterans feel like they had something to learn. No one laughed at her anymore. They watched her. They listened. Frank came in last. His face was unreadable, but his posture had softened. For the first time in years, he was not barking orders or criticizing. He walked over to Haley, paused, then handed her a mug of coffee. Black, no sugar, right? She looked at him. That is right. It was a small gesture, but in that world it meant everything. By noon, the shop had turned into something between a classroom and a pit crew. Haley stood over the hood of a Mustang with Logan, showing him how to calibrate the idle air control valve. She did not just tell him what to do. She explained the why. Every part, every sound, every movement had meaning. Feel that? She asked as the engine smoothed. That is the car saying thank you. Logan smiled wide. You talk like cars are alive. Haley did not hesitate. They are, just not in the way most people understand. In the corner, Carlos watched silently. Then he picked up a torque wrench, walked over, and asked, "What are you doing after this?" Haley raised an eyebrow. Why? Because there is an old Camaro in Bay 3 that has been mocking me for a week. I think it respects you more than it respects me. That got a rare laugh out of her. He followed him, and together they opened the hood. Meanwhile, Frank stepped into his office and closed the door behind him. The blinds were open so he could still see everything. He watched as his team, his once disjointed, prideful, disconnected team, worked together. Was not just about fixing cars anymore. It was about rebuilding trust. And it had started with a girl no one wanted to listen to. He opened a drawer and pulled out an old photo. 3 men in overalls, grease-stained and smiling. One of them was Haley's father, Mark Walker, the man who taught him everything. The man he had once called brother. The man he had let down. Frank stared at the photo, then picked up the phone and made a call. Hello. A voice answered. It is Frank. I need to talk to you about your daughter. Outside, Haley finished with the Camaro. She wiped her hands, looked around, and saw what was forming. Family, one bolt at a time. Just then a sleek black Escalade pulled into the lot. It was clean, expensive, and out of place. The kind of vehicle that turned heads because it did not belong in a place like this. The door opened. A tall man in a sharp gray suit stepped out, sunglasses hiding his eyes. His shoes were polished, his walk steady, confident. He moved like someone who owned buildings, not just cars. But when he looked at Haley, his expression changed. Haley Walker. She tensed. Yes. The man removed his glasses. I am Dean Mercer, Chief Executive Officer of Mercer Motors. Your father saved my life 15 years ago. I heard what you did yesterday. The entire garage fell silent. Dean stepped forward. I want to talk business. And I want to talk now. And just like that, the story shifted. Again. Not from the garage floor, but to something bigger. Something that would test everything she had ever learned. The office door closed behind Haley with a soft click, but inside the air was heavy. Dean Mercer sat across the desk, calm but deliberate, his movements sharp, like the edge of a freshly cut gear. The rest of the garage stood frozen there, faces pressed to the windows, watching through the glass like it was a movie scene they could not miss. Dean looked at her with the kind of intensity that made even experienced executives hesitate. But Haley held her ground, her back straight, her eyes steady. She had grown up in grease and steel, not polished boardrooms, but her resolve was carved in something far stronger than confidence. It was carved in fire. Dean leaned forward. I have followed your journey from the moment I got the call. You resurrected a dead car, united a broken team, and rebuilt trust in a shop where it was nearly extinct. That is not just impressive, that is rare. Haley stayed quiet. Dean smiled. I am not here for compliments. I am here for opportunity. He slid a folder across the desk. Inside were documents stamped with the Mercer Motor seal. I am opening a new division, he said. An elite performance and innovation unit. Custom builds, concept development, young minds with real hands-on talent. No politics, no fluff. I want you to lead it. Haley blinked. Led it. Yes. You would be the youngest project director in Mercer Motors history. You would choose your team, your shop, your vision. The offer hung in the air like a spark about to ignite. She opened the folder and scanned the terms. Then she paused. What about this garage? What about Frank and the others? Dean nodded. I assumed you would ask that. You can take them with you. Or he stood and walked to the window, looking out at the shop floor. Or you can turn this place into the first official Mercer Innovations satellite. You make the calls. I just provide the tools. Outside, Frank looked in through the window, his face unreadable again. 4 years, he had run this place with clenched fists and closed doors. But now, he gave her a small nod. The kind that said, this is yours now. Haley took a deep breath. I will do it, but on my terms. No suits walking in and treating these guys like background noise. The shop lives and breathes because of them. You mess with that and I walk. Dean turned, a rare grin touching his lips. Deal. Word spread like wildfire. The next day, new tools arrived, branded gear, state-of-the-art systems. But what mattered more was the change in energy. Haley now stood at the head of something that was no longer broken, but reborn. Customers poured in, not because of flashy ads, but because word traveled. There was something different happening at that garage. Mechanics who respected each other, a young woman who knew engines better than anyone, and a team that operated like a Heartbeat, strong, steady, and impossible to stop. 3 weeks later, a man walked in wearing an old leather jacket and a crooked smile. He looked around, eyes landing on Haley. "You look like your father," he said. "He once fixed my car in the middle of a snowstorm without asking for $1. Haley smiled. "That sounds like him." The man nodded. "He was a good man. And now you are carrying that torch." Later that night, after the shop closed, Haley stood outside staring at the stars, her mind full but her heart still. Frank walked up beside her. "Your dad would be proud," he said. Haley whispered, "I hope so." Frank handed her a box. Inside was her father's old name patch. Walker, still stained with oil. "Put it up," he said, "right above the new sign." The next morning, the garage had a new name. Walker Performance Garage. In honor of the past, built for the future. It was more than a business. Was a legacy. And it all started because one girl refused to be ignored.